Hello everyone, this will be the 23rd chapter of The Second Life of the Guardian, written and read by Insect Overlord. This chapter is titled, Oh Yes, This is Definitely How the Foster System Works, and has content warnings for vaguely referenced suspicions of childhood sexual abuse. Izuku twirled his earring as he mulled over the conversation he had with his parents and the detective. He had told them what Overhaul said about his goals and ideals, and how he took his and Aries' blood. He told them about Overhaul's quirk and his suspicions about what he was doing to Aries. All four adults had gained a dark look at that. He tried to explain everything chronologically so he wouldn't forget anything. Throughout his whole story, his voice had not wavered once. He sounded more like a soldier reporting to his commanding officer than a child recounting a traumatic kidnapping. That was probably why the adults collectively held their breath when he hesitated to explain just how he escaped. If he could talk about everything else so easily, whatever made him pause must have been even worse. You lied about Mimic so Aries could be in your room. That was very brave, Izuku-kun. Was it so you could try to escape with her? Tsukuuchi prompted gently when Izuku stayed quiet for too long. His mom turned to glare at the officer, then smiled at Izuku. You don't have to talk about it now if you don't want to, baby. We can take a break if you're feeling overwhelmed, she added gently. Tsukuuchi glanced at Inko nervously. Of course not. We can stop if you don't feel up to it, Izuku-kun. He relented. It wasn't that Izuku was feeling overwhelmed. Honestly, he was surprised at how calm he felt. It was more that he had to come up with a lie that wouldn't ping Tsukuuchi's quirk. He didn't feel like mentioning Kalki. Too many questions. Well, Izuku started slowly. I took Aries to the blanket fort and made her a clippy so she wouldn't be afraid of disappearing me. Sorry, Tsukuuchi cut in. I'm a bit confused. What do you mean by disappear? Her quirk. Overhaul, F him, called it a curse. No one scolded him for the swear. But it's not. Aries just doesn't know how to use it, and that's not her fault. No one taught her. Izuku avoided the question entirely. He didn't know how much Aries would be comfortable with him sharing. Anyways, I gave her my lucky charm so she wouldn't be scared. Then I picked the lock to get us out with another lucky charm, which was hard because I already had one. Then I held Aries and walked home. He was leaving quite a bit out, but technically he had walked through Kalki's portal to his home. You walked home. Izuku-kun, there's officers roaming every street around your apartment. Why didn't you talk to any of them? No, actually, why did none of them notice you? Tsukuuchi sounded dumbfounded. Are you calling our son a liar? His dad asked, affronted. Izuku could tell he was faking. He was thankful his dad was going along with his story, even though anyone could tell it was a gross under-exaggeration. Lie detection quirk or not. He must have sensed Izuku's hesitancy to tell the detective. Distrust for law enforcement was a family trait. No, of course not. Tsukuuchi raised both hands in defense. I was just worried that no one noticed two clearly distressed children roaming the streets alone. Izuku-kun has no reason to lie, and he doesn't seem like he would, even if he did. Aww, Detective Cat Dad was worried about him. Sansa cleared his throat and cut in, changing the subject. Given what Izuku-kun has said, I think it's best he and Aries get checked over by a doctor. Even if Overhaul healed them with his quirk, there could be long-term damage. It's better to be safe. There's also the matter of psychological damage. It might be best if Izuku-kun was put into therapy. I actually know a few child psychologists I could refer him to. He said the last part gently, as if he was expecting his offer to be shrugged off. No need, his mom waved her hand, and the officer's shoulders fell in defeat. He's already in therapy. We'll talk to his psychologist to see if he needs extra sessions, but he doesn't need a new one. Oh, well, I'm glad he has someone he can talk to, Sansa replied, sounding genuine. Tsukuuchi settled back in his seat and folded his arms. Now, there's the matter of Eri. You said Overhaul claimed to be her father? He asked Izuku, who nodded. Well, even if that's true, for obvious reasons, he's not a suitable caretaker. That was an understatement. We don't know who her mom is, or if she would be able or willing to take her in, and that's only if she's safe for Eri. Honestly, at this point, she'll probably go into foster care. Tsukuuchi sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. It's not ideal, but there isn't a lot of options here. The Japanese care system focuses heavily on reunification with kin, but in Eri's case, we don't even know who her kin are, much less if they're safe to reunite with. Izuku looked down at Eri's sleeping face. She looked peaceful. Her features were slack, and there was no trace of the crease Izuku thought was permanently on her brow. He didn't want her to go. He wanted to stay with her forever. No, he would stay with her forever. Izuku was going to be the best big sibling ever. F the legal system. Dad, Izuku called. His dad looked up and Izuku met his eyes, something he rarely did. He wanted his dad to know he was serious about needing his help, as loath as he was to admit it. Eri's my sister now. I'm not letting her leave with a stranger. Well, that's not how it... Tsukuuchi started apologetically before he was cut off by Hisashi. No, Izuku's right. He and Eri have been through a lot together. We can't exactly separate them, right, honey? He said, turning to his wife as if she had more authority than the actual officer of the law. Inko reached out and squeezed her husband's hand. I think we can handle another kid. Izuku will be a great big brother, right, Izuku? Izuku nodded seriously. The best. Tsukuuchi's quirk didn't ping a lie. Still, the detective cut in. There's a lot of legal stuff we need to figure out. A social worker needs to be assigned to Eri's case, and if you're serious, you'll need to do a home study and a ton of paperwork. The whole process can take months. We can do it, his mom agreed. And besides, Eri feels comfortable with Izuku. It would be best not to separate them. That's just the thing. You won't be able to foster or adopt Eri until everything is finalized. Until then, she'd have to stay in a temporary foster home. No. The detective was cut off by Izuku's refusal. No? I'm sorry, Izuku-kun. I really am. That's just the way the foster system is set up. Tsukuuchi apologized, sounding truly sorry. The only way she could stay with you during the legal process is if you were kin, which is a little messed up in my opinion. What makes someone related by blood safer than anyone else? He muttered the last part. Izuku's father placed a hand on his chin and contemplated something for a moment, before speaking up. Well, what if we actually were related? He asked. What was his dad planning? Well, Tsukuuchi humored Hisashi. You would need to be able to prove it in a court of law. To do that, you'd need to come up with a family tree of sorts. What about a quirk? Pardon? I know a guy with a lineage-based quirk. If I get her to testify that Eri is our kin, would that be enough? Hisashi questioned. Kwame, Izuku's dad knew a guy for just about everything. Either he was just that charismatic, or he had a really strange job. The detective looked considering. I suppose that could work, although I have to ask, what makes you so sure you're related? Come to think of it, Izuku was wondering the same thing. Sure, Eri had the same hair type and color as his father, but that was where the similarities ended. In a world of supernatural powers, white hair wasn't exactly unusual. Eri is the spitting image of my younger brother, which is strange because I don't remember him ever being in a romantic relationship. Not that we really talked much after... He coughed. Our, fight. Since when did Izuku have an uncle? Actually, since when did he have any family on his dad's side? His dad never talked about them, so Izuku assumed Hisashi was spit out of the earth like all other beings of hell. After Hisashi's confession, he called his contact with the ancestry quirk. She arrived at their house in under an hour, which both impressed and concerned Izuku. Did she not have a life? Who comes that quick when an acquaintance calls them for a favor? Whatever the reason, Izuku was glad for it, because it meant they could sort things out while Eri slept. He didn't want to stress her out with even more strangers. After using her quirk, the woman shared that Hisashi was Eri's uncle, only with a strange amount of greats before uncle. It didn't make a lot of sense to Izuku, so he pretended they didn't exist. Hisashi was Eri's uncle, which made the two of them cousins. In other words, she could stay with them while they finalized her adoption. Tsukauchi called over Eri's newly assigned caseworker. His parents signed a few papers and did other boring adult things, and soon enough, Eri was legally Izuku's foster sister. The whole ordeal couldn't have taken more than 3 hours, but after everything with Overhaul, Izuku was exhausted. Eri had finished her nap, but Izuku almost wished she hadn't, so he would have an excuse to go to sleep instead of listening to his mom. "Come on, Izuku," his mom prodded gently. "It won't even take that long. Just a quick checkup to make sure you're okay." You've got to be a good example for Eri. She was right. Eri would be anxious enough in a hospital setting without Izuku resisting. She might think there was something to be scared of if she thought Izuku was scared. "You're right, I'm just tired," Izuku relented. His mom smiled sadly down at him. "I know, baby. We'll be as quick as we can." Izuku looked over to Eri, who, after waking up from her nap, had moved to sit beside him instead of on his lap. She clutched Izuku's hoodie sleeve in one hand, and her second sippy cup of juice in the other. "We are going on a trip, okay, Eri? We're going to see some of my friends that will help you feel better." Izuku tried to explain the hospital in the most positive way possible. Eri nodded, fully trusting him. "Okay." This concludes Chapter 23 of The Second Life of the Guardian. I don't know a lot about the foster system in Japan, but I do know that the system in the US is geared towards reunification. In some cases, that can be a good thing, but there's also other cases where it's not beneficial for the children and it makes the whole process harder on them. There's really a lot of messed up stuff about the foster system that really needs to be, revised. But as of right now, that's how it is. I don't know the exact logistics, but I know you can't foster without a license, and you can't get a license without a home study, and a bunch of paperwork. The whole process can take months or even years. I am also 90% sure that it's a lot easier if you're related to the child you want custody of, because the whole system prioritizes kin. Not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. Even still, Izuku's parents shouldn't have been able to get, legal guardianship over Eri that quickly. That's not very realistic. But then again, this is just a fictional story. Anyways, that concludes this chapter, and the next one should be up soon. Thank you so much for listening.